Welcome back, Richard. It's good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
I think we're going to continue our conversation about the summer.
Summertime, it's hot. I was talking to my son. He lives in Austin, Texas, and it's over 100 degrees there already. So what is this? Middle of May, and they're up to about 108, 109 degrees.
I, I
We're
go,
getting there here. It's in the 90s again. So,
yeah, I go jogging at the end of the day, most
ooh.
days, not every day. But yeah, so I get home and between 5:30 and 6 in the evening, it's still, 92, 95 degrees outside. So
Still pretty hot. The air is pretty thick at that time of the day. A lot of stuff, a lot of particulate matter in the air. But
when you're lucky, last week I didn't get to jog most days because for some reason, Mother Nature doesn't realize her schedule sometimes, and she had postponed her our daily showers from the usual 3 o'clock or so
right,
to 5 and 6 o'clock. It was like, man, I can't jog because it's
gets in
pouring.
the way. Right.
Yeah.
So here we are with summer.
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about using the summer. We had done a previous podcast about summer slide, learning and mental health risks that occur in the summer that are brought by the summer, this break that we have in the summertime. So what we want to do with this podcast is sort of take a broader, some people call it the 30,000-foot view. Every once in a while, we like to be take a little bit broader view of things.
Yeah.
And so we want to do that with summer. If you're raising children, the summertime presents a unique set of challenges.
Yeah.
Um, I think of those movie scenes where the kids burst out of the doors of the school, right? And they're running into the summer, right? They're out of school and they're running into the summer. Just a few years ago, it wasn't that long ago, kids at every grade level
Hmm.
waited with great anticipation for two breaks during the school year. The school year was very well defined in those years. But these two breaks, one was at Christmas time, the holiday vacation, the Christmas vacation, because schools would close for anywhere from 7 to 14 days, about 2 weeks. And at that point, the year was half over. You had gotten the first half of the year finished, or just about first half of the year finished, and you had 2 weeks of freedom. So
Right.
that was the best part. And I remember I was probably in high school before it was easy for me to return to school. I hated returning to school after the Christmas vacation because it was so much fun having nothing to do. And then you could stay up late, you could sleep in. It was just this great break in the school year. Some college students have that now. They have this wonderful break, some of them for a month.
Hmm.
You get a month off. So you work real hard for 16 weeks, then you get a month off. Then you go back and work second half. The second break was over the summer.
Hmm.
It was such a relief. You had done all the assignments. You had taken all the tests. You had lined up for lunch. You stayed cooped up in these buildings for the fall, the winter, and the spring. And now the year was yours. The summer was yours, and you had this yawning 2 month gap, this wonderful playing field for 2 months. You could do whatever you want. In fact, there was a little ditty that was popular years ago. It said, "No more homework, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks," and you were
Yeah.
free of school.
Right.
Now, at the risk of longing for the good old days, or saying, "Well, when I was a kid, in my day,"
Yeah.
so there's always this danger. But there was a certain definition to the school year. Uh,
Yeah.
and even as young as you are, well, you remember that the school year was very well defined.
Well, as we were preparing for this and thinking about things, and I grew up here. I went to elementary, junior high, and high school, just maybe 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
I've lived in this area my entire life.
Hmm.
Um, and thinking about how well defined the school year used to be, um, you just talked about these two well-defined breaks that students had. Now, and it's so different now because, back then you got for Thanksgiving, you got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off.
That
You
was it.
school Monday and Tuesday, and you got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. So it wasn't like a whole week.
Right.
You had spring break, and that was good. But other than that, your only two breaks were winter break and summer break.
Right.
Um, but now, now I never remember. I was really working hard to try to remember back when I was in elementary, middle, and high school to whether we ever had a hurricane day.
Oh
Here
yeah, you probably
now
didn't.
we have, students will miss 3 or 4 days sometimes. It happens almost every school year now. Students will miss almost a week now, sometimes because of a hurricane, or because of the threat of a hurricane sometimes. They'll miss school days just because there's a hurricane close by, even if
Right.
it's not going to affect us, because, with all of the concern, and maybe it was because they didn't care about us all that much back then, but if
No.
the winds are going to get over like 25 miles an hour, they won't run the buses. And
Right.
so if they don't run the buses, they can't have schools open
Right.
because of the safety hazard and because so many students rely on the bus to get to school. If the buses can't run because of safety, then they have to close schools. And so
Right.
there is so many not even to mention the pandemic, there are so many interruptions in the school year now that it feels and proceeds very differently now than it did, just, even 20 years ago.
Yep. And the other thing was school. I don't know, when I went to school, when you went to school, I mean, you and I are different generations, but school was a totally immersive experience. I mean, everybody left the house and went to the school building every day. And we all did it. Everybody had this same experience, this
Did the same
leaving.
schedule,
Yeah, everybody left. I hated to stay home, like take a sick day, because there was nothing to do. I mean,
right?
everybody was gone. Everybody else was in school. So
Right.
that's where you went. That was it. But it was totally immersive. And school imposed a rhythm on your year. You started school and then you had these
Yeah.
vacations, and everybody was sort of on the same schedule. And your entire life, if you had a family, you had children in school, your entire life was determined by the school calendar. It was
Right.
whatever was going on at school, that's you adjusted to meet the school calendar. And there was sort of this unwritten contract that we would all leave home in the morning and we would spend the day in school, and then we would come back and play with our friends. At least for everybody in that school zone.
Right.
And when we went to school, everybody in the neighborhood went to the same school. We had this unifying experience of
Right.
we all left our houses,
You all knew the same
all,
teachers.
we all went to the same building, and you had this teacher in second grade, and you had this, oh, you're going to have Miss Ziegler. We had a teacher in third grade. Her name was Miss Ziegler, the people you never forget.
I had a
Oh,
Miss Ziegler for sixth grade.
well, she was mean. She was
Oh,
as mean as a rattlesnake. She scared us to death
my
in
Miss
third
Ziegler was
grade.
great.
Oh no, she was just this hard-edged, brittle, old school teacher,
Yeah.
old school teacher, not old school teacher. And and but there was this, you're going to have Miss Ziegler in third grade, so that's going to be a tough year. Everybody had this tough year in third grade. Then you had Mrs. Paul in fourth grade, and that was easy because she was nice. And you'd go up to her desk and say, "Hey, Mom, what do I have?" Because you were very close to her. Okay, so there was this unifying experience that everybody had. Um, but with school, you got there on time. Nobody was. I don't remember kids being late. I mean, you might if you had a flat tire or something. You got there on time and you stayed until dismissal time. There was no leaving at lunch or leaving at 2 o'clock. You stayed until everybody left at the same time. You did your assignments
Yeah.
and you turned them in on time. There was this contract. There was this unwritten contract. I don't remember kids not doing. I guess they did. I'm sure there were kids who didn't, but everybody did their assignments. Everybody turned their work in on time. And every 6 weeks, you got a report card, the six or
Right.
nine.
Yeah.
Remember those days?
I do.
It's the only time your parents were informed about how you were doing in school,
Yeah.
when you got a report card.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
parents, now they monitor hourly. Now they monitor multiple times every day to
Right.
see if teachers are putting us. The computer has changed this relationship. Okay. My parents got a report card and they saw my grades for that grading period. Sometimes it was 6 weeks. Now it's 9 weeks.
Yeah.
But that was the only communication there was between parents and teachers. My life with my teachers was between me and my teachers. My parents were just told how I did.
Yeah,
There was no discussion. They signed it and turned it back.
we didn't even have agendas
No,
or journals for them to take home every day where the teacher wrote notes. It was no.
it was
Um,
just assumed that you would keep track of your own work.
right.
We didn't have agendas. We didn't have assignment. I mean, if you wanted to, you did, but no, we didn't have any of that. The work was at grade level. Miss Ziegler taught third grade for 87 years, and she knew what to expect of third graders. Okay.
Right.
And so you just did it. You didn't argue with her and say, you're doing this wrong. She was more experienced than anybody else at this. And so you got out of the way and let her do her job. So, and my parents were just informed this is how your child's doing, and it was up to my parents. They could do nothing, or they could do whatever they wanted to do with the information they had. They didn't go to the teacher and argue with her about a grade.
Right.
It was unthinkable. Okay, and everyone with children seemed to be on the same schedule. We had this wonderful unifying experience. We all experienced the same
Right.
things, at least in our neighborhood. Now, all of that, and what parents need to remember today, and we'll frequently see parents and they'll talk about their educational experiences. And I remind them that the educational experience today has almost nothing to do with the educational experience that even you had,
Hmm.
Bernie,
Right.
as I mean, it has changed and it's complete. I have children. My oldest child is around 40, 43. And even his experience is completely different than his children's experiences.
Right.
Okay. The concept of school has changed forever. And so you can no longer say, well, when I was in school, because we were in school, it has nothing to do with what our children are experiencing.
Right. And that change, a lot of people will say, well, that's because of the pandemic. And there I am
No.
doing it again. But no, this change really began in the early 2000s. And
Right.
there's a we, we can do we can do hours long podcasts about where some of those changes came from, and we can talk about
Mhm.
IDEA or No Child Left Behind, and how all
Right.
of those things sort of started that shift from the way schools used to be to where they are now. But I don't want it to sound like we're saying that some of these changes are bad, because it's just the way that things have evolved with technology and with the way things are. However, some things are not very good. We are very
Mhm.
critical about some things,
Right.
but when you think about just something like school choice,
Right. Hmm.
school choice has resulted in a tremendous difference in the way that schools function. You know,
Right.
as you noted very well, when we were in school, we everybody in our neighborhood went to the same school.
Right.
And now you have, if you live, in our area, there are multiple magnet and charter schools that
Mhm.
students can go to. And so now you have, you can have kids on the same street who all go to five different schools.
You can have kids in the same family
Right.
who
We
go to different.
have patients where, yeah, one sibling goes to one elementary school and another sibling goes to a different elementary school.
Not elementary, middle, high school, but two different elementary schools
Right.
in the same household.
Right.
Okay. That's an enormous difference compared to having Miss Ziegler every time you go to third grade, you have this is going to be your teacher. That's a
Right.
completely different experience. Okay.
Right.
Um,
High stakes
so
testing.
yeah, high
What's
stakes
that high
testing.
stakes testing, man?
Yeah. When we went to school, I wasn't afraid to go to school. There wasn't, I mean, you felt pressured you knew you were going to have to do homework and seat work and belt and all that stuff. But high stakes testing turned schools into high risk, anxiety producing, I call them sweatshops.
Yeah.
My kids didn't like school because there was too much, there was pressure, there was pushing, and there was restrictions, and it was all because of high stakes testing. The
I can
joy was taken out of it.
absolutely, and I can remember because I was in grad school when No Child Left Behind was launched and stuff, and I can remember the first time I started hearing students, second grade students, so 7-year-olds, just being terrified
Hmm.
about going to third grade. Because
Right,
third grade was when they were going to have to take the FCAT. At that time, it was called the FCAT. They were going to have
right.
to take the FCAT for the first time. And if you didn't pass the FCAT, because you got one chance, if you
That's
didn't
right.
pass the FCAT, you had to do third grade again.
If you
Didn't matter
didn't make
what
it,
your grades were, didn't
right.
matter how well you did all year long. If you failed the FCAT, you had to do third grade again. And second graders were terrified of going to third grade.
If you're an adult, that kind of high stakes work, that sounds like a good idea. But geez, remember, if you were 7 or 8 years old, that has a completely different flavor.
Right.
And we impose that on kids. So instead of going to school, like we all went to school together, we enjoyed going. That was our social life. That was our athletic life. Our life occurred in the school building, at home and in school. Now, with high stakes testing, the joy of learning was replaced with this fear-based performance that you had to do. And also a skills-based curriculum where you had to do worksheets and memorize and drill and drill and drill. And it turned classrooms, these happy places where good things happened, it turned them into little sweatshops.
Right.
Okay. And this sweatshop mentality created a school year that by the end of the school year, by May, by this time of the year, by the second half of May, we're all limping into the summer. We're not bursting out the front doors. We're sort of all limping into the summer. We're exhausted and
Mhm.
we're just thankful that it's over for another year.
Right.
Okay. There's just this general exhaustion of, God, I'm glad it's over.
And in many ways, you're talking about the parents. You're not even talking
That's,
about the
yes,
kids.
right.
You
That's
know,
right.
the kids are equally exhausted and just want to be
Right.
left alone. They don't want to do anything. And so, by this time of the year, they're so spent
Right.
emotionally, mentally, that, there's more opposition now to, some of those summer maintenance of academic
Mhm.
skills.
Mhm.
There's more opposition to it now than ever before.
That's right. Right. Yeah, kids, they want to be left alone. I mean, they've been drilled and pushed and prodded and poked and measured. They just want to be left alone. They want
Well,
to go out and play, whether they're 8 or 18, they just want to play.
right. And I think that part of that, if you think about this, parents, that, everything all year long, and students are savvy enough, most students are savvy enough to pick this up.
Right.
Year long, you learn something because you got to take a test. You have to learn this because, and teachers will say, this is going to be on the test.
Right.
And they say it over and over and over again. And so then when you get to the summer, and again, just think about what this would mean from a kid's perspective. I want you to do this math, and let's do a little bit of math, let's do a little bit of reading.
Right.
And they say, I don't have to do that. Why do I have to do that? I don't have a test.
That's right. That's right.
So
Why am I
when
doing that?
there's not that high stakes, you know, output that has to be provided through a test or through whatever,
Hmm.
students don't understand the purpose of it now. And
Right. Right.
so
Has
now you
nothing
have
to
to
do with
convince them
right.
that, learning should be a good thing. You should
Right.
enjoy learning, but they don't.
Yeah, learning should be enjoyable. There's no reason why it has to be punitive or painful until you get to graduate school. But it's not in graduate school. It's
Right.
painful in elementary school and
Yeah.
middle school. Okay. So kids are feeling the same exhaustion.
Right.
They want to play, they want to move around, they don't want to be tested. Okay. But you can't leave them alone. And this is our dilemma.
Hmm.
You can't just we're all exhausted, but you can't waste the summer. You have to use this summer. You have to use this time in a productive way. We know all the foibles, the problems, the disadvantages of this of how schools are structured now. My goodness gracious, my kids had silent lunch. They weren't even allowed to talk at lunch because they only had 20 minutes and they had to wolf down whatever they were eating and get back to their classes. No recess. You go in and you eat quietly and then you go back to your studies. My God, that would be horrible. But here we are in the summer, and we have to use the summer to our benefit.
Right.
And what we recommend that you do is think about the summer in three sort of silos or three columns. First of all, get everybody's mental health back.
Right.
Let's release the pressure. Let's let everybody regain their bearings, okay?
Right.
Second one is prevent summer learning loss.
Mhm.
Do something, but you can do many things. Prevent summer learning loss. And the third thing is to use this summer to teach your kids responsibility first.
Right.
Okay. These three things we want you to do. So the
Yeah.
first one is mental health.
Well, and I think that as we get into these three things, I think that there's really a really important point, and you mentioned this in the last podcast, and that's something that we're going to refer to as intentional parenting,
Right. Right.
because you can't, and in some ways, there are times when I'm an advocate for just winging it. You just
Yes. Have
go
fun.
for it, whatever. But this is one of those situations where it requires some intentional parenting. You need to sit down and plan some of these things out and
Right.
prepare so
Hmm.
that you have a response, you have a plan going
Right.
into it.
Mhm.
Just trying to wing it is going to make it much more difficult for you in this situation. So
Yeah.
be intentional, be thoughtful, and plan some of these things. And like you said, the first thing, when you're thinking about getting your mental health back,
Hmm. Hmm.
you have to have a plan for that.
Right. Yeah. What are you going to do to relax? They have to relax. You have to play. You have to renew your healthy relationships. You've been pounding on your children to do their assignments for 180 days. Okay, now you have to repair those relationships. Now you have to regain some healthy relationship with your children. You can't just let the summer happen. Okay? And I think that's the most important thing when we talk about intentional parenting. You can't simply say, okay, we have 2 months to do nothing. That's absolutely wrong because that's what kids will pick up. And that's well, I don't have to do anything because it's summer
Right.
vacation. No, we don't. That's not mental health.
Right.
That's poor planning. So you have to plan what you're going to do to regain family relationships. Kids have to go back and start eating healthy foods, sleeping on a regular schedule, getting out and exercising, the three-legged stool of eating, sleeping, and exercising. So first of all, get their mental health back. Second, you have to prevent summer slide.
Yeah, and I think that with the changes that we've talked about with the way schools run now,
Hmm.
parents see the summer the same way that the students see the summer. Like
Right.
I have worked, I have done my kids' schoolwork for 180 days. They don't
Right.
even see it that the kids worked for 180 days. They see it
Hmm.
that they worked for 180 days. And so I don't want to do any more over the summer. I
Right.
don't want to keep fighting about reading or
Right.
doing math or doing any of those things.
Mhm.
And and we get that. We understand the position that parents are in and the
Mhm.
desire to get away from that pattern. However, you have to again be intentional in the way that you're approaching this and intentional in the way that you're planning for how are you going to handle reading. And so you can find ways to read for fun. You know what? You don't have to do any of your AR books for
Right. Just read
just
whatever you
read
want.
something that you're interested in.
Hmm.
But working on those, making it fun, making it sort of integrated into your daily life can make academics a little bit more fun. It can help close some of those gaps that
Right.
that you were talking about before between where the kids should be and where they actually are academically.
Right. A subject like math really lends itself to that because if you know that, like a third grader it's in third grade that we learn the multiplication tables. Okay. Well, if you know that your child hasn't mastered the multiplication tables, use the summer to close that. If you know that your child can't do long division, then spend some time in the summer to teach long division or
Yeah.
percentages or whatever your kids are doing. It's especially useful in math and reading. Use the summer to close those gaps, but make it fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy the process and show them that learning can be fun. Okay.
Right.
So first of all, mental health, second, summer slide. But there's a third thing that you should do in the summer.
Yeah.
That is that this is a perfect time because you don't have the imposition of school.
Hmm.
This is a perfect time to teach your children the important lesson of first you take care of your responsibilities and then you have free time.
Right. Yeah, we alluded to this again in the last podcast, but you know, parents, when we think about those students in the middle school years,
Mhm.
early adolescence,
Right.
A lot of times there aren't many summer programs for those students.
Right.
They're also not old enough to go out on their own and to drive or to go out with their friends while you're at work.
Hmm.
So those kids are oftentimes left at home,
Right.
and
Right.
oftentimes left at home unsupervised.
Right.
And so parents struggle with that because that means that the kid oftentimes means that the kids are just going to be online on their devices, playing video games on their
Right.
phones all day long.
Mhm.
This is a fantastic opportunity to teach, do you take care of your responsibilities, and then you can have access to those things.
Then you have access. I
Um,
don't mind that you're doing it, but I want you to do this first.
Right. And there are many ways to do that.
Right.
You can, from things as elaborate as, putting their phones or their, controllers for their video games, putting them in a lockbox that has a timer. And so that lockbox doesn't open until a certain time of the day or until you remotely, we can use technology to our benefit as well, where you can remotely open it from your phone while you're at work after they have acknowledged and demonstrated that they've done their chores or whatever. But you teach them that they take care of those responsibilities, and then they can have access to what they're wanting. And this is a great time to do that.
Bernie, how many times patients come in and they'll say, well, he can't do anything because of homework. He has homework every night, so he can't help out in the kitchen. He has homework, so he can't go to bed at the right time. Okay. You don't have that in the summertime.
Right.
None of those excuses exist in the summertime. And let me also add, parents don't get summer break. Okay.
Right.
Parenting doesn't end because the school year is over.
Right.
Okay. You have another set of tasks as a parent that you need to do during the summer, and teaching your children to accept the concept of first you take care of your responsibilities, then you have free time. Summer is a perfect time to do that.
Absolutely.
How do you do it? Very simple, not very simple. It's going to take a lot of work. Divide the day into three 8-hour segments. Okay,
Right.
think of the day as 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of this, and 8 hours of that. What is your day going to look like? What do you want your house to look like during the summer?
Right.
Um, then the second thing is, what household chores do you want each child to master during the summer? Well, I want them to learn how to do laundry. I want them to clean their bedrooms every day, not once a week. You do
Hmm.
it every day. I want them to learn how to take care of their own bathroom, their
Hmm.
own laundry, their own beds. Um, I want them to keep their rooms organized. I want them to help with the dinner dishes. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
But this is the intentional parenting part. What household chores do you want each to master during the summer break? And then the other thing is, what other responsibilities are you going to have your children do? Are you going to have family time?
Right.
Are you going to have family meals together?
Right.
Okay. You don't have homework, you don't have sports activities. This is a time when you can reestablish family meals. Doesn't matter what meal it is. This is when you can reestablish, we want to sit and have dinner together. But you can't just force them to sit and have dinner for a half hour. You have to plan and say, I'm going to make it interesting for my kids to want to be there.
Absolutely. I remember when, being at this age and, at that time, of course, we did, there were some video games,
Hmm.
like Nintendo and Atari and things like that was out. But our goal was to get outside. And so,
Right.
I'm home with my younger brother during the day, and the goal was, Mom, there were certain things that we had to accomplish. There were certain chores we
Hmm.
had to have done.
Right.
The goal was I needed to have those things done because as soon as Mom got home at 5:20,
Hmm.
it took her 20 minutes to get home from work. As soon as Mom got home at 5:20, I wanted to go outside because
Right.
I wanted to be outside to play, to meet up with
Right.
friends and stuff like that until it was time for dinner. And then we came in and we all had dinner. And then we hoped, because of the summer and the way that daylight savings times worked, we could go back out for a period of time to play again before the street lights came on and we had to come inside.
Mhm.
Now,
Right.
that could only happen if we got everything done before Mom got home.
How old were you?
late, it was younger then. We were probably in sixth grade, fifth or sixth grade.
Yeah,
Uh,
you were in late elementary school,
yeah,
and you knew that you had to do these things before you could. You got that,
right.
okay?
Yeah. And so we did it. And my brother is 4 years younger than me. And it wasn't like I had to fight him every day to do that. It was just that, no, this is what we have to do. And, we had a mom that, made sure that my mom, that we got that stuff done.
I
Or
wouldn't, I wouldn't have crossed her either,
she was tough. If
right?
one thing wasn't done, your evening was over.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to have to do. You have to impose this on children that they do. All you want them to do is they do their responsibility. Remember the days when kids would say, "May I be excused?" Can I
Right.
leave the table? And it's okay to say, "No, I want to do one more thing before you leave," and then you go. Or you can say, "Certainly, you've done everything. You're free to go." Okay. You want to keep repeating this. And they have to practice these things every day. You can't, that's why I say about cleaning your room. You don't clean your room once a week or once a month. You clean your room every day. So you get in the habit of keeping it clean.
Right.
Okay. That's practice. You have to practice these things in order to, kids need to practice these things in order to get good at them. You have to do it every day. You get into these routines. Okay.
Right. And it's the same for parents. You have to
Right.
practice it every day as well. It's going to feel different and foreign and awkward when you
Mhm.
first start some of these things if you've never done it before. But
Right.
to get your kids involved in helping with preparing dinner,
Mhm.
that's not a very difficult task to do.
Right.
Even if it's just set the table, put,
Mhm.
we're going to need this, silverware. We're going to need these plates,
Mhm.
set the table. Go ahead and get your drink. Go ahead
Mhm.
and do this part or that part. But it's all in preparation for we're going to sit down and have dinner together. Now,
Right.
again, it may seem strange at first if you've never done it before, but once you're practicing it and doing it every day, it becomes natural and it's easier and easier and easier to do.
That's right. That's what you have to do. You have to organize it, schedule it, and you have to do it every day.
Right.
That's how your kids are going to get good at doing this, and how they're. Bernie was you had to do that every day, right?
Right.
I mean, there was never, you didn't take a day off. You didn't say, I don't have to do it anymore. No, you do it every day.
And
Okay.
Thursdays were worse because Thursday, for whatever reason, Thursdays were our our really cleaning house day. And
Okay.
Thursdays were the day where we had to vacuum, we had to dust, and we had to do all those things.
Mhm.
I don't know why that was Thursday, but Thursday was when we had to do that. So
Right.
that's there was no shifting from that. That didn't change in the summer. That
Hmm.
didn't change, during the school year when you got home on Thursday, those were
Hmm.
things you had to do.
Right. So you first of all decide what are the responsibilities? What are the chores? What are the family times? What are meal time? Decide what you want and then structure your home accordingly. Then the second half of that is what do we mean by free time?
Right.
So first you do responsibilities, now you do your free time. What is free time? Okay. Is it you can do whatever you want? Are there some restrictions? What are the constraints on free time? Is it there are certain hours. What are the hours of free time?
Right.
Is it until 8 o'clock, until 10 o'clock? And you have to decide what the time constraints are.
Right.
What activities are included in free time?
Right.
What are you allowed to do? I say to parents, your kid wants to play video games, play video games. But you play video games after, because that's your free time.
Right.
You do what you want to do. Free time is free time.
Right.
So this is when I don't care how much you play video games, as long as you're taking care of your responsibilities.
Right.
Then are there limits?
Hmm.
But yeah, free time, you have 10 hours of free time every day, but does that mean 10 hours of video games?
Right.
Or, are you going to add? So again, intentional parenting is let's put some structure here. Let's put
Right.
some constraints.
Yeah, I like the idea of, free time is free time. However,
Yeah.
this portion of free time is spent outside,
Hmm.
and the free time is spent doing
Right.
electronic anything. This
Right.
portion of free time is spent doing something else. And
Mhm.
and so yeah, you can do whatever you want within that time, but it's
Right.
got to be this type of activity. And so,
Right.
like we were talking about, having dinner structured. If yours is the type of kid who doesn't like going outside, and I fully recognize that there are a lot of kids who don't like going outside,
Right.
they need to get
Hmm.
outside. And parents, I'm sorry, you probably need to get outside too.
Hmm.
So if you have it structured such that, we're going to have dinner at about this time, this is what everybody's responsibility is to help with dinner. Part of our free time as a family is we're going to play a game together, or we're going to go for a walk while it's
Hmm.
light outside. We're
Hmm.
going to,
Right.
finish dinner. We're going to put everything, clean up and everything. We're going to then go for a walk around the neighborhood all
Hmm.
together. Ride bikes or do something like that. Skateboard. It doesn't matter what. We're going to go as a family. We're going to go around the neighborhood, or we're going to play a board game, or
Hmm.
but we're going to do something together.
Right.
So, but it's structured and it's structured time and it's time that where the kid has to do something in particular, but it's
Hmm.
also free time. We're gonna go for a walk, but yeah, you can ride your skateboard if you want to. Yeah, you can use your scooter if you want to. You can ride your bike if you want to. We're gonna exercise. You have the freedom to do it the way that you want to do it. This is the way that it's going to be structured. So, but like you said, it's got to be intentional. You have to plan it. You can't just wing it and say, okay, well, tonight we're going to go for a walk, but tomorrow night we're going to do something different. Or, who knows what we're going to do the third night? We may not do anything.
Hmm.
It can't be inconsistent like that because as soon as it's inconsistent, then the kid's not going to expect it and then they're going to push back.
That's right. And that's the important thing is that there is this expectation and there are these constraints, not rules. They're just constraints that yes, it's free time, but I don't mean it's free time to be on your cell phone for 10 hours. No, that's not what we mean by free time. But that's what intentional parenting provides is it's thoughtful and it's in the child's best interest. No, it's not in the child's best interest to watch TV for 10 hours at a time.
Right. Yeah. And so parents, you have to decide the way that you want it to look because
Right.
in my mind, for example, it's much nicer if your kid finishes the work that they need to do during the day and they
Mhm.
have some electronic time before I get home.
Right.
And then when I get home, then we're doing dinner together.
Now
We're
it's family time. That's right.
doing some family time.
Mhm.
Parents, I recognize that some of you may would rather them not be on electronics.
Right.
When you get home, then they can use electronics because it keeps them busy or it keeps them
Mhm.
engaged in stuff while you're finishing and doing whatever you need to do.
Right.
But
Mhm.
whatever it has to be for you and your family, just structure it that way and be consistent.
Right.
We're not
Do
going to
it
say
every
that
day.
everybody has to do the same thing because that's not realistic.
Right.
Do what works for your family, but be consistent with it.
Right. And let's say the kids agree that we want to do a game night on Thursday. We want Thursday to be game night. What game do you let them choose what game they want to play?
Right.
Or
They can rotate between the kids.
right. Or do you want to do
You
something?
decide.
Right, right. So make them part of the process.
Right.
Give them ownership. If they have ownership, it's more likely that they're going to do it.
Absolutely. So,
Okay.
over in the end, we recognize that summer can be difficult.
Hmm.
Gotta now you have more time that you have to plan with your kids, but my goodness, plan,
Right.
prepare, have an idea as to what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and then stick to it, implement it, and stick to it. It may be awkward, it may be strange at first, for everybody, for you and for the kids.
Right.
But but do it because it's going to be ideal for them to help prevent some of that, certainly prevent some of that mental health, some of those mental health consequences of the summer. Certainly the summer slide, just building a little bit of reading and math into every day. It's not that difficult. You can do that, and it doesn't have to consume hours and hours and hours. It can be, we're going to read for 20 minutes and we're going to do, we're going to build some math into some of this. However you want to do it.
Right.
Baking is very mathematical. It's like you're looking at ratios and you're looking at volumes. And so you're measuring things and you're counting things. That's math, add that into their life.
That's right. And because what do you want during the school year? you want them to take care of their school responsibilities first and then have free time. Okay, that's the goal. I mean, this is 12 months a year that you want this same idea. What you want to get into your kids is first you take care of your responsibilities, then you have free time. When they go to college or when they go to work,
They have to
first
have
you
that.
take care of your responsibilities, then you have free time. That's the goal that we're trying to teach. Right.
Absolutely.
So
All right.
this is the summer is a good time to get this started.
Yes, it is. So start thinking about that yesterday,
Right.
parents.
Mhm.
It's important. So, all right. Well, I think that that's it for today. I hope that everybody gets their summer kicked off in a positive way, and we'll be talking more about some of this stuff over the next few months as we get
Right.
ready for school to start back in August. So until next time, until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.